Hey, Writer's Edge Nation. This week's episode is about healing and progress and the ups and downs of it. A couple things I hope you get out of this episode. I hope it's a reflective episode for you and allows you to reflect on where you are in your journey. And I also hope that you get a sense of community out of it, that you're not alone. We are all experiencing very similar things, even if they have a little bit different details in the process. I ended up with a 2 week break this fall instead of a 1 week break. But here we are with another great episode, and I hope you listen and enjoy. Welcome to the Writer's Edge podcast, a platform to share conversations about the health and wellness of horse and rider. I'm your host, Farley Schweigert. Hey y'all, it's Farley with the Writer's Edge podcast, and welcome to another episode. Today I want to talk about two things that are very similar in how they progress, and that's healing and progress. Healing and progress are not linear. They are not linear events that just poof happen. They don't go in a straight line. We don't start healing and it just takes off in a trajectory and goes in a straight line and everything's healed from that injury and we go on. Same thing with progress, whether we're learning a new skill, training a horse, whatever we're doing. It just doesn't work that way. It's very frustrating to me and highly unfortunate in my opinion most days, but it's the way of the world. So let's talk about healing for a second. Healing is a series of ups and downs. Anytime I work with a client, I tell people that progress in healing is easily seen when you start noticing more good days than bad days. When you start forgetting to use your crutches because you don't need them anymore. Or if your horse is taking more sound steps than lame steps, just little things like that, because we're a society that wants it now, right? We want the quick fix. We want the here and now. I believe over the last few years, our attention span has gone. The marketers study this a lot. Has gone from, I don't know, it was kind of at 7 seconds and now we're down to maybe 3 seconds when you're talking about attention span for things on your phone and social media. And while in my opinion, we tend to have a little bit of a longer attention span when it comes to our horses or to the details of what we're trying to improve with our riding, it's still a big part of our culture here in the United States. I want it. I've decided I want it, and now I want it now, right now, not tomorrow. I don't want to have to work for it. I don't want to have to take 2 steps forward, 1 step back, and I want it right now. Healing from an injury is the same way, and you see this more. It's easier to see with our horses than it is with ourselves, because just like with our horses, we can often become barn blind to ourselves and what we want, and a lot of times too, emotion gets in the way. I've had conversations this summer and fall about my horse Charlie with my vet and different members of my tribe and other professionals that I've consulted with, and it's so much easier to rehab somebody else's horse instead of your own. It's so much easier to help somebody else sometimes with their problem on the pattern or their problem with their swing that is to fix our own. And you know what? As much as I want to rage against that, it's okay. It just is what it is. So if you need an outside perspective on things, get it. It can be from a PT, it can be from another professional, it can be from your mentor or one of your tribe members, but bounce things off of people. And a lot of times somebody, an outside perspective, can help you see the ups and downs and how you are having more progress than not. It's just not a I dream of Jeannie kind of thing. We can't wiggle our nose and it appear. Healing happens in stages, whether we're talking about soft tissue issues, joint issues, no matter what part of the body we're talking about or what kind of injury we're talking about. It happens in phases, and different aspects happen in each phase. When it first happens, that's kind of the acute phase, is what we call that. And a lot of the body puts up a lot of protective mechanisms to help protect the body and to kind of seal off the injury, to prepare to heal it. And then we go into the subacute phase and then the chronic phase. And different things happen at both of those phases to promote healing, and things will go good, things will go not so good, and kind of in a roller coaster deal. Because there's a lot of factors at play when we're talking about any kind of healing. The cool thing about things on this podcast is that everything is intertwined. Here we are talking about healing, and we can talk about this in the aspect of physical healing. We can talk about it with mental or emotional healing as well. That you're going to have ups and downs, good days over bad. It's and it's the same for horses. It's the same for people. So I love the intertwinedness of all of our conversations here on Rider's Edge, that all of these things can be applied to all parts of our arena. But staying on kind of the original topic here of physical healing, if we're talking about a soft tissue issue, there's a lot of systems in play here. Whether we're talking about it in a person or a horse, you have the tissue that has the lesion in it and what it's connected to. Then you have all the neighboring muscles and tendons and ligaments that, whether they co-contract with that tissue or they're just in the neighborhood, they're going to be directly affected by that lesion. Also, you have the fascial system that's connecting all the muscle and soft tissue layers to each other and to bones, and helping keep the shape of the body up. And as we're learning more about that, there's a lot of contractileness. I'm making up words here today. And there's also a lot of actual nerve endings, and we believe that there are some pain receptors in that tissue as well. And then you have to look out for any nerve issues that are going on. So not only do we have all that soft tissue to look at, now we have the nervous system. And if that's impacted within the soft tissue issue, you guys well know by now that I like alliterations and things that sound the same. But the nervous system is the tissue in the body that heals the slowest of all the tissues. So you throw that in, whether it's actually been directly impacted or it is just relaying the pain messages from that area to the brain and back, it has a role in this instance as well. Additionally, we have possible compensation patterns on the opposite limb or the diagonal limb. If we're talking about a horse, it can show up either place. And typically, whether we're talking about a person or a horse, whether we're in the upper body or the forehand, or if we're, in the lower body or talking about the rear end of horse, Then we have the pelvis connected in the core, because that is what connects both of those parts of the body together, and things can kind of get off. We know now, as we've talked about on the podcast, that the body is going to find the easiest route to get something done. So you already have these potential compensatory patterns that were already set up before you have the issue. Not to mention the mental strain of being injured, whether it is a horse being on complete stall rest, or the owner having to scratch out of competition, or we're talking about an extended a year or longer delay in going to competition. And the same thing with a human athlete or a rider, whether, it was a traumatic event that caused the injury, or it's just a big enough injury that it's keeping you on stall rest for a while, and impacting your life in several ways. So nothing happens in a vacuum. And because there's all these systems attached to it, we can't get all the players on the field in a formation all of the time. We can some of the time, and then somebody's going to fall out of formation, and then somebody's going to get back in, and it's kind of like herding cats. Although hopefully you guys are better at herding cats than I am. If you know about Street the Barn Cat, you know that I tend to have very mean cats that I think are so cute. But they're mean. She'll let you pet her, and then she'll slap you. So it's a little bit like herding cats sometimes, and getting all the aspects of healing to come together. Same thing if we're talking about mental, emotional, or spiritual healing. It's typically not one thing. That's a big issue in this country right now, as we are continuing to struggle with COVID-19, and what to do, when to do, how to do, and continuing to have these issues. And not to get political in this podcast, that is not my intention ever. But there is a huge need for mental health. There was before COVID, and I believe even more now, because COVID has touched all of our lives. Nobody's coming out of this pandemic unscathed in one way or the other. So having conversations about mental health, even if it's with a professional and you need a professional, that is great. But I believe that there are a spectrum of that, just like there's a spectrum for lameness. There's a spectrum of emotions, of whether you're an introvert, whether you're an extrovert, all sorts of things. And I think even for the mental health aspect, or emotional healing, spiritual healing, anything like that, reaching out to somebody is a very good first step, whether it be a close friend, a relative, somebody, a professional, a trained professional that you haven't met yet, or a combination, a mentor, anybody to help with the healing, because they can give outside perspective. They can just check on you. How are you doing? And help mold that, because if you really stop and try to heal emotional or mental trauma, I hate to use the word correctly, because I don't want to talk about, let's use the word fully. Let's not use the word correctly. If you really want to work on healing mentally or emotionally fully, then there are a lot of aspects to that, whether it's past trauma coming back up through current things, or a whole different thing. And I very much urge you, if you need to talk to a professional, please reach out. There are hotlines, there are people here to help, and it is not a sign of weakness. It is not I don't know, any other derogatory thing that our culture has put on mental health that, oh, it's a sign of not being tough, or I can't handle things. No, we all have struggles with that at one time or another. So please reach out to somebody. And if you're on that part of the spectrum where you don't feel like you need to, but your best friend and you talk about it, or you deal with that stuff with your horse in the barn, whatever mechanism or path that you choose, if you choose to fully work on healing that way, it takes time, and it's going to be a roller coaster where you get a portion of what's going on figured out, and then you have to, or at least for me, you have to let it sit for a while. And kind of, for me, I let things, my brain's a hot mess. I've got things going in it all the time, but in this kind of instance, I'll let it kind of, I ruminate on a lot of things. I ruminate probably as much as our cattle do, honestly. But so I'll let it run there kind of in the background, and there may be days or weeks go by and I'll have an aha moment and another piece of the puzzle will fall into place. And I'll be talking about something with somebody, whether I'm helping mentor them or we're talking about something that's similar but not completely related, and I'll have an aha moment and be like, oh, there's another piece of what's going on with that particular issue. And just keep piecing it together that way. And like I said, it doesn't come all at once. And gosh, I wish it did in both those instances, but it sure doesn't. It sure doesn't. And a lot of times, even with the mental, emotional healing, there's a physical aspect of it. Our physical being is connected to our emotional being, mental, spiritual being. There's a physical aspect to healing, even within the emotional realm of things. And it just ebbs and flows. And because no matter whether we're talking about physical or emotional healing, there are a lot of systems at play. And it's the same thing with progress, y'all. It's, I've in my workout routine right now, I'm starting to progress through some shoulder things and starting to change up my core. And I've been getting up before work and riding my rope horse that's in his 4th trimester. He's in his 3rd now, but he was in his 4th trimester for a good minute. But, I digress when I make jokes about Tank. That's what happens. It just, I've been working on all this and getting this schedule kind of down with the time change and everything. And I'll be danged if an old injury didn't crop up, an old issue at my right SI didn't crop up. And it just made me mad. It didn't make me mad, it made me irritated and a little bit just kind of indignant of how dare you. I've actually been working to heal this, and now you're going to show up. And how did this show up? And a lot of times that's just wasted energy. Just get through the problem and move on. No, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's very helpful to see the whole picture and what caused that, and how to do things differently. In this instance, I'm just still a little bit indignant that it even showed up in the first place, because I've been working on it, dang it. And I've been getting up earlier than I ever get up and getting my reading done, and then going to the barn and riding before work on most days. So I've been working on a change, and so I don't expect for the change to be thrown at me to be a backwards one. I don't expect that at all. And it's just irritating, y'all. And so as I'm working through it, I just continue to look at the progress I'm making in I don't shy away from the fact that we're going backwards a little bit there, but I remind myself of the progress I'm making in other areas, and that in this particular instance, my SI issue is a chronic, old, did I say old? Issue that I never resolved. Because again, a newsflash, PTs are not always the best patients either. We tend to be hard-headed, and this PT in particular, being a horse girl and a PT, I don't really have a chance on not being hard-headed. So it's just frustrating in that there's a step backwards, but there's also steps forward in the whole total picture of that goal, and that's where we're headed. And I know to not let it linger and treat it now, so that I'm not treating it for a long amount of time later on. So honestly, probably the lesson out of this small step backwards is that I've gotten wiser. I've gotten wiser and less hard-headed, and I am working on it now in order to be better later. So it just ebbs and flows. Progress is not linear. It's not linear with our colts, is it? It's not linear with our horses. That's probably, for all the listeners out there, as well as myself, one of my favorite things to work on is horsemanship, and learn how to be better at that, and learn from people who are very handy. And there was a meme floating around on Facebook the other day, and you might have had it, you might have shared it, you might have had it in your feed, but it said something to the effect that beginner riders want intermediate drills, intermediate riders want advanced drills to do with their horse, and advanced riders want to know how to do the basics. And it was very striking to me in what we focus on as we get more experience. And it's the same thing with progress. As we get more experience and we work harder through a specific goal, we're able to not only see the big picture, but we're able to break the picture down into tiny little basics and just focus on them and take the emotion out of it. And that takes a lot of progress to get through, to get to that level. Because if you think back through the evolution of your journey, and maybe questions that you asked people, whether it be at a clinic or with a trainer or just with somebody you ride with, and you think about what you possibly talk about now, hopefully the conversation's changed quite a bit over those years, and you can reflect back and go, yeah, I have progressed in this and changed to that, and now this is what my focus is. And you didn't, even though you may have woke up today and had that realization through this podcast, it didn't just happen today. It's been years of your work going, of your wet saddle blankets, of your sore legs, of, blood, sweat, tears, working through different things to get to that level. You just happened to slow down long enough to notice it today. And that's okay too. So it wasn't linear to get to this point, to have this recognition, and it wasn't by chance either. It was due to your hard work and not quitting when the steps backwards seem greater than the steps forward, or the step forward is possible, but you have to break through this barrier first. So none of this is linear. And hopefully this conversation today helps you, whether you are working through a physical issue with yourself or your horse, you're training a colt, you are working through an exercise program, or you are struggling with how you feel and what's going on with the pandemic and throughout the world. I hope my goal for this conversation today is to show you you're not alone, that people are struggling with the same things that you are, and B, to hopefully give a perspective to say, okay, that makes sense. I'm not going to give up, because I know that the backward steps are only temporary, and we'll go forward again, and we'll continue to have this cycle, and we'll continue to work through this journey towards our destination, but continue to look at the journey and how a lot of times the things that you gain out of the journey are much more important than when you actually get to the destination. So if you need somebody to reach out to, please feel free to reach out to me at ridersedgetherapy.com, or you can catch me on Facebook or Instagram. I'll be happy to chat with you. I'll be happy to message with you. I really just wanted today to be a safe space to get you to think about what current situation you're going through that's a healing situation, and give you a place to go, and know that you're not alone and you're struggling with the same things that we all are. So as always, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you down the road. Thank you for listening to Rider's Edge Podcast. For show notes and other thoughts, head over to ridersedgetherapy.com. If you would like to stay connected and continue the conversation, head over to my free Facebook group, Rider's Edge Health and Wellness for Horse and Rider. Thanks for continuing the conversation, and as always, I will see you down the road.